Welcome to the Hotelligence Podcast, your strategic vantage point on the changing landscape of hotel safety. Hosted by Jim Kortz, a retired FBI DHS investigator, and Don Carr, a former frontline security owner-operator with years of first-hand incident response experience on hotel properties. Every episode brings you closer to understanding the full picture and what the future may hold. Let's begin.
Thank you for joining us on episode 9 of the Hotelligence Podcast. The Do Not Rent Illusion, Why Property Level Bans Fail. I'm Don, and during the years I operated on-site security teams in hotels and multifamily environments, I saw a lot of attempts to control risk using something called a Do Not Rent list, or DNR. On paper, it feels like a simple solution, but in practice, it rarely works the way people expect.
And I'm Jim. I spent my career in federal law enforcement where exclusion decisions are supported by clear authority, documentation standards, and enforcement mechanisms. But hotels don't operate in that world. So today we're unpacking why property level bans feel reassuring, but break down operationally and legally.
Well said, Jim. And this episode is not about blame.
Right. It's about understanding why DNR lists are far more fragile than they appear. So first, what is a DNR list? When people hear do not rent, they often imagine a formal, enforceable prohibition, something standardized, verified, and consistently applied.
In reality, most DNR lists are informal. A note in the system, a line on a log, sometimes just institutional memory.
They aren't bans in the legal sense.
They're reminders, and reminders depend on people, context, and continuity. So let's talk about the turnover, because one of the biggest challenges in hospitality is turnover. Front desk staff change, managers rotate, security contracts turn over. Over time, the original context behind the DNR entry disappears.
Without context, a note loses meaning. Staff may not know why it exists, how old it is, or whether it still applies.
Right. And when uncertainty shows up at the desk, hesitation follows.
And that hesitation isn't neglect, it's risk management in the absence of clarity. So PMS tools aren't enforcement tools. So when we say PMS, we mean property management system. So they're designed for reservations, billing, and operations, but they're not designed to support restriction decisions.
Right. DNR notes often live deep inside free text fields, mixed in with preferences, operational comments, as well as the system-generated data.
And they're easy to miss, easy to misinterpret, and easy to override unintentionally.
And that's not a failure of staff. It's a mismatch between system design and expectation. Another fragile point is identification. Hotels aren't built to perform rigorous identity verification.
Right. Minor differences in spelling, formatting, or documentation can prevent a DNR note from surfacing.
Right. Staff are also balancing speed, service, and accuracy at the desk.
That makes consistent matching difficult, especially during busy periods. So let's talk about denying service is more of a legal decision. Refusing to rent a room isn't just an operational choice, it's a legal one.
And staff have to consider whether the denial is justified, defensible, and consistent with policy.
When certainty is low, the risk of getting it wrong can outweigh the confidence to act.
So restraint becomes the safer option. Let's talk about the third-party bookings and how those break local controls. With regard to OTAs or online travel agencies, that adds another layer of complexity. Reservations come through different channels, formats, and data structures.
And that information doesn't always carry over cleanly between systems.
That disconnect can bypass local notes entirely.
Right, and that further weakens property level controls. So let's talk about why DNR lists don't travel with the brand. So even within the same brand, properties operate independently. They have different owners, different operators, and different legal exposure.
Right. And once a do not rent decision leaves the property where it was made, it stops being a local operational choice and it becomes shared judgment about a person.
That shift matters legally. Shared DNR information can trigger privacy concerns, defamation risk, and discrimination exposure, especially when the original decision wasn't made to an evidentiary standard.
And brands are aware of this. They license names and standards, but they don't own guest contracts or employ property staff. Facilitating shared DNR lists would pull brands into decision-making and liability that they're structured to avoid.
So DNR lists stay local by design.
Not because sharing wouldn't be helpful, but because at scale, it would be dangerous. So let's talk about the illusion of control. At the end of the day, DNR lists feel like control. They signal action. They create a sense of boundary.
But structurally, they're brittle. They rely on memory, consistency, and certainty in environments defined by turnover, speed, and ambiguity.
And that doesn't make them careless tools.
It makes them symbolic rather than systemic.
So in closing, do not rent lists struggle not because people don't care, but because informal tools are being asked to do formal work.
Until that gap is understood, expectations will keep colliding with reality.
So in the next episode, we'll look at another common assumption: why cameras don't actually prevent incidents, even when they're everywhere.
That conversation builds directly on what we discussed today.
And remember, we're in this together.
And together, we make hospitality stronger.
We publish a short, written insider briefing alongside each episode. It goes out on Wednesdays when the episode drops. If that's useful, the link is in the show notes.
Thank you for joining the Hotelligence Podcast, where experience informs smarter, safer hotel operations and prepares you for what comes next. Stay informed, stay confident, and stay connected. As the conversation evolves, Jim Cords and Don Carr will highlight developments that help hotels strengthen their approach to safety and risk management. See you next episode.